The new CFP 5+7 pros and cons. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We provide the best in discussion, debate, and analysis. Based on your participation, we appreciate you being here. Let's dive into it. The new tweaked college football playoff system of 5 conference champions and 7 at large. 5+7 equals 12, announced on Tuesday. Let's dive into the particulars, let you know what we think about the new system. First of all, we got 12 teams, and let's make it clear, 5 conference champions, the top 5 conference champions, based on the College Football Playoff Committee's rankings, they will reach the playoffs. The top 4 in those rankings receive the byes. The other 7 teams are at-large selections. So those 4 champions will most likely that receive the byes will come from the SEC, the Big 12, the Big 10, and the ACC. And then a group of 5 will fill that 5th spot as a conference champion. How likely is it that one of the group of 5 champions will be ranked higher than a power conference champion? Well, the last time that happened was 2021, only 2 to 3 years ago, Mark. Cincinnati at number 4, undefeated 13-0, outranked Pitt by a ton. Pitt was number 12 at 11-2 as the ACC champion. However, one oddity in all of this is that at the same time that the group of 5 is weakening considerably, that during this entire 10-year run of the playoffs, going back to 2014, so 2014, 10 years of the playoffs, 4 teams entered each season. That's 40 in 10 years. The group of 5 received 1 bid. That was from Cincinnati as the American Conference champion in 2021. 1 bid out of 40. Now we are giving the group of 5 an official seat at the table, a guaranteed seat at the table. The problem is that the group of 5 was much stronger during the 4-team college football playoff era, with the likes of Cincinnati, Houston, BYU, UCF, and now SMU leaving for the ACC. The group of 5 was much stronger. Now, outside of possibly Boise State, possibly Fresno State and San Diego State, generally the best programs in the group of 5, the programs that have been representing the group of 5 in the New Year's 6, Houston, Cincinnati, UCF in particular, they're now Power 5 teams. And so the group of 5 has been diminished considerably and now has a spot at the table. So instead of, as we would have had over the past 10 years, a UCF, a Cincinnati, that was, regardless of where they were ranked, generally a top, legitimate top 15 to 20 team in the country, the final team that's going to be selected, meaning the 5th conference champion coming from most likely the Mountain West or the American Conference, that team is going to be about the 50th best team in the country. Just like what we saw last year with Liberty reaching the New Year's 6, being that group of 5 selection at 13-0 and losing to Oregon by 43 points. I don't have an issue with the group of 5 being represented in this playoff. However, it should have happened before. It was justified before, and it's much less justified now. Makes no sense, as is typical in college football. What about Notre Dame? Consider this. Especially with the Big 12 weakening with the losses of Oklahoma and Texas, the Pac-12 being no more, the strength of the SEC and the Big 10 probably beating up the other conferences in non-conference play, at least at the top, that the best teams in the Big 12 and the ACC may offer some conference champions that have multiple losses, 2-3 losses. The last time a conference champion from the power conferences emerged as the champion of a conference with 4 losses, you got to go all the way back to 2005 in Florida State at 9-4 in the ACC. Don't give me 2012 in the Big 10. That's obviously due to probation. So 2005 was the last time we had a 4-loss power champion. However, it is frequent to have 2- and 3-loss teams emerge as conference champions in the power conferences. What if Notre Dame goes 12-0? Been asked this many times. And there's a conference champion, let's say out of the Big 12, that goes 9-4 or even 10-3. And Notre Dame's sitting at 12-0. And Notre Dame's going to be the 5 seed, and a conference championship will mean the automatic bye for that lesser team, that lower ranked team. Yes, it will. And is it justified? Yes. Too bad, Notre Dame. If you want a different system, if you want to be included as a conference champion, those byes are reserved for conference champions. There's an easy remedy to this. Join a conference. So regardless of Notre Dame's record, yes, the best they can be is number 5, and that is based on their choice. They did this to themselves. All right. There will be bowls in the playoff system. However, basically the bowls are dead. At least the bowls within the playoffs are dead. There are going to be bowl games played outside of the playoff that will get less and less attention as the years go by, and will get far less attention in 2024 than they even did in 2023, because there were just 4 teams in the playoffs, just 3 games played in the playoffs. And now you're going to have 12 teams and 11 games in the playoff, and those are going to be a glut of bowl games are going to be included outside of those on-campus first-round games. I'm saying right now that there should be no more labeled bowl games in the playoffs, and this is why. The bowl games are about tradition. They're about conference affiliation. They're about matching a culture, a city, a brand, a style of that bowl game. When you think Rose Bowl, you think Big Ten against the Pac-12. Sugar Bowl, that is a hosted bowl game by the SEC. The Orange Bowl, it used to be the Big 8 back when I was growing up. In recent years, it's been the ACC, with the regional tie-in to those bowl games. That doesn't exist anymore. And it started to break down starting way back in 1998 with the entry of the BCS championship game that would take away 2 of those conference champions to play in the BCS championship game. So that's when we started to see non-traditional Rose Bowls, Sugar Bowls, Orange Bowls. And then that was accelerated greatly in 2014. Consider this. Since 2014, guess how many times we've had a traditional Pac-12 champion playing the Big Ten champion in the Rose Bowl? Once in 10 years. So what is that telling us? The Rose Bowl's dead. The Orange Bowl is dead. The Cotton Bowl's dead. The Sugar Bowl and the SEC is dead. The Sugar Bowl, for example, is just going to be another bowl game played in the playoffs. So it's a playoff game. It's not a bowl game. It's a playoff game. And who's going to be selected for that game? Well, nobody's going to be selected because it's either going to be a second or third round playoff game. Therefore, it's going to be based on the 2 teams that won the previous week or had a bye and had a certain seeding to be ushered into that game and to be elevated into that game. So 2 teams will never, ever be selected ever again in the history of college football, unless things change again, to the Rose Bowl. No 2 teams are going to be selected for the Sugar Bowl. It's a playoff tournament. So do away with the bowl games. The Rose Bowl should never exist again. It hasn't existed for the last 10 years. When we've had one game, 2018, Ohio State, Washington, where the Big Ten champion took on the Pac-12 champion. One time in 10 years. The Rose Bowl is dead. The Orange Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, they're dead. They're playoff games. Actually, the more meaningful and the more justifiable, valid bowl games are going to be played outside the playoff. So this proposal is going to die, and it's not going to see the light of day. And I understand that it's not a great proposal, but I would consider having a Rose Bowl game actually outside of the playoff, because it's no longer a bowl game. It's no longer the Rose Bowl. It's a playoff game, and that's all that matters. Its significance is based on being a playoff game. The way things shake down, and we've done this many times in looking at specifically the 10 years of the 14 playoff and the College Football Playoff Committee's rankings, and then put that into a 12-team formula to see how many teams would have made it, what type of record you need to make it. Basically, 10-2 is going to get you into the playoff, especially if you are in the SEC and the Big Ten. 10-2 will get you in every time. 9-3 could be on the border, because think of it this way. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to be the two best conferences, and it won't even be that close. But is the College Football Playoff Committee going to treat them as the two best conferences and give them a huge advantage, favoritism, preferential treatment? I don't know. I would like the preferential treatment to be given to the teams in the conferences that win the big non-conference matchups. If there's a tiebreaker to be made, it shouldn't be based on reputation or who we think is the best conference or the best teams from the best conferences. It should be based on the big non-conference games. There should be a reason you play the huge non-conference games like Texas, Michigan this year. If the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be giving preferential treatment, much like the SEC did during the 10-year playoff run of the 4-team playoff, and it was justified for two reasons. Because the SEC played the best in the non-conference games. Year after year after year after year, the SEC played the best against the best opponents and won the biggest games in non-conference play, number one. Number two, although this, in my opinion, should not have been taken into consideration, I understand the logic that if the SEC showed up every year and outperformed the other conferences in postseason play, then they proved to be the best conference year after year after year after year. Now, I think each individual year should be taken on its own merits, but the SEC built up that equity. Will they carry that into 2024, into a 12-team playoff? Well, I would love for the College Football Playoff Committee to do their best, to be unbiased, to erase history out of their heads and just treat these four conferences in particular equally until it's proven on the field during big non-conference games what the best conference is. And then if we see over time, over 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, into this playoff of 12 teams, that the SEC and the Big Ten have distinguished themselves based on non-conference dominance in September and then also playoff and postseason dominance, then we will start to see that separation where a 10-2 tiebreaker between, let's say, the Big Ten and the Big 12, so always going to go the Big Ten's way. And then maybe it will get to a point, if the SEC and the Big Ten really separate themselves, that a 9-3 team is going to get preference over, let's say, a 10-2 team from the ACC or the Big 12. Keep in mind that for 9 years in this 4-team playoff, that even though we think that there are a lot of conspiracies out there, the College Football Playoff Committee always selected the teams with the best records. You can line up 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18. Every year up until 2023 with the Florida State situation, for those 9 consecutive years, they always selected the teams from the Power 5 with the best records. They never elevated an SEC or a Big Ten team past a Big 12, Pac-12, or ACC team with a better record. Now, they had to break ties, of course, because there were multiple teams that would be tied for, let's say, the 4th playoff spot with the same record. But they always selected the teams with the best records. Will that continue in the future? I believe that it should unless the Big Ten and the SEC or whatever conferences distinguish themselves. By looking at the strength of the 4 conferences and projecting forward, I would expect that the Big Ten and the SEC will take up 7 to 8 of these playoff spots in a typical year. That the ACC and the Big 12 will take 3 to 4 spots, and then, of course, the Group of 5 gets the other spot for your 12-team playoff. There's a better way to do this, folks. This is not a horrible way to do it, because we should have the 11 best teams in the country playing in this playoff, and then like the 50th best team in the country coming from the Group of 5. That's basically going to be the formula. And when I say the 11 best in the country, not that a 12th or 13th or 14th team could not say, hey, we're better than number 11, but generally very close to the top 11 teams. And then that outlier from the Group of 5, a Liberty, a Coastal Carolina, a Toledo, a Tulane, whomever will grab that final spot. It can be done better, and we have done it better here at the Voice of College Football. So coming up soon, we will break down what the college football playoff should be, what it should look like, how it can be done better, and that starts with scheduling. We appreciate your comments. Please like the video and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football.